Hello and welcome to a new session on the paper feed units for the AccurioPress color product line. This particular paper feed unit is the PF707, which is a 3-tray vacuum fed paper feed cabinet. And I'm going to take you through some of the operations and setups of this. So to start with, I'll mention that we've got side guides here that are adjustable with they get some blue lockdown screws here. We use those to keep those guides from moving and also to make sure that they hold the correct position when the paper is up in place. We've also got a tail guide here that will allow the end of the paper to be located. There's a blue switch in here that you can move up and down. It doesn't move very much. It moves probably a millimeter or so, and it just adjusts where the top of the paper level stack is when the paper comes up to being level. So we see the drawer as it sits here with letter size paper in there. If I want to change the size of paper that's in there, first thing I'm going to do is open up the guides. There's also a blue knob or a blue lever on the side here that you probably can't see in that picture that allows me to release those guides so that they move open. I'll take the letter size paper out. I've got some 12 by 18 paper that I'm going to put in there. I'm going to move the guides up against it there. One of the things you want to be careful of with this is that although I bring the guides up to this match up to the paper size when I have it at the bottom of the tray, oftentimes these side guides are a little tighter at the top than they are at the bottom, so they'll squeeze that paper a little bit at the top. The drawback to that is that they will slightly impede the paper feed, and as you get into heavier and heavier stocks, for example, this is a card stock that I've put in here, it will drag that paper enough that it will cause you a paper jam because it's not able to pull that paper out of the tray freely enough. There's several ways that you can adjust that at the top. What I'm going to show you is kind of the shortcut way. It's the way that I use most frequently myself. We'll discuss some of the others in a different video. So on this, what I'll do is I'll pull some of this paper up and bring it up between these side guides, and I'll make sure that I've got just a little bit of room and tighten down these thumb screws at the end. And what I'm trying to achieve is so that this paper will flow freely between those guides. I'll push the tail guide up against the paper, and so now I've got the paper size set. Some of the other things that you'll see in here that are available to adjust is there is a air feed from the side that will fluff the paper up to separate the sheets up. There's also an air knife on the front edge here, the lead edge, and that's to help separate those pages out. One of the things that you don't see on this paper supply, because it stays on the inside of the machine when you open the trays, is that there is actually a vacuum belt system that pulls the paper up against the top of the feed unit and pulls those sheets out to get it over into the feed rollers that are over here. A couple of things I'll mention on this as well is that you'll see that all the adjustments that I made were blue knobs. On the edges of the paper feed trays, there are guides that tell you for each one of those knobs or levers what they adjust and how you should adjust them. And now we've got the drawer mechanically aligned for the paper that's in there. A couple of things that I'll point out here towards the end of this video is that, as I mentioned, there are 3 trays in this paper cabinet. All of the trays in here line up the same way. They operate the same way. The main difference is going to be that out of the lower tray, oftentimes you'll find that that's where the heavier stock is going to go to. Preferred to pull out of that bottom tray because that's a straight shot into the engine so that it can print the sheets without having to make as many bends in there. And you will also notice that on the handles of these, there's this little half moon shape here is actually a release lever for that tray. If you listen when I pull that in, you can hear the release solenoid in the back unlocking that tray, at which time you can pull that out. It's possible if you just grab that tray and pull it directly out without given it that half-second pause to release the latch, that it will beat the latch releasing and you won't be able to open that tray. Now you'll see that I've moved my camera around so that I catch a different angle of the adjustment brackets for the top of the paper cabinets. I've still got that 12 by 18 paper in the tray. You'll see that on the edge of this guide that there is a ruler that has millimeter markings to mark the size of the paper as it sits in that tray. I'm going to change this tray now, and we'll talk about how to set that guide if you wanted to do that by the size of the paper. So I take some 8.5 by 11 paper in here, then I'll close my guides up against that. And so then you'll notice on my guides here, what I want to do is I want to have the edge of the metal bracket that's behind this scale line up with the millimeters that lines up with the size of the paper. So for letter size paper, that's 280 millimeters. I could take that same adjustment and make it on the back then, so that both the front and the back guides are set for 280 millimeters. And that's a second way for you to adjust the size of the guides to match up to the size of the sheet that you're putting in the tray. This is a front view of the vacuum feed paper feed cabinet. If you look at the bottom two trays, you can see that there are windows in those trays that I can use to look into this paper feed cabinet while it's operating, to look at the top of the stack and watch the paper feed off. If I'm having a problem with the paper feeding out of that tray, I can take a look at it and I can see if the paper stack is behaving poorly, if it's got curl, if there's something wrong that I can troubleshoot so that I can adjust that paper supply so that it will work better.